Hello everyone, and welcome to session 2 of the Anarchist Ideology. Today we will be looking at the various different ideologies within anarchism and their various factors and ideas within them, and core ideas within them, that make them separate from anarchism as a whole. So, anarchism's development began in with the French, just before the French Revolution, with around the same time as socialism, and in fact developed from socialism. We begin, of course, with anarchism itself, which developed in the late 1700s, early 1800s, with Max Stirner and Jean-Pierre Proudhon. Who developed different views on anarchism, and in fact Max Stirner did not view himself as an anarchist, but we will go over both their individual views next session. During the 1800s, anarchism, with the death of Proudhon, anarchism split between social anarchism, also known as collectivist anarchism, and individualist anarchism. The main difference between the two of them is social anarchism focuses more on the effects on the group and how the nature of society trumps that of the nature of the individual, whereas individualist anarchism holds that the individual should never be subordinate to any group activity, and in fact the individual and their rights and wants are far more important than what the group wants or what society wants. These two form or trends in anarchism have a variety of different ideological groups within them who argue various different things. But today we are only going to look at these four of anarcho-communism, anarcho-syndicalism, egoism, and anarcho-capitalism. So the first group we're going to look at, of course, is social anarchism. Social anarchism originated with Proudhon and the anarchist Russian revolutionary Mikhail Bakhtin, who split with Marx on the nature of how to achieve a socialist state. The first ideology within social anarchism is anarcho-communism. Anarcho-communism came out in the late 1800s, early 1900s, as a way to kind of reconcile anarchism and communism, though of course it was not called anarcho-communism, it would only be named such later on. Anarcho-communists do hold a lot of communist views around the economy, private property, and things like that. But they also call, unlike communists, they call directly for the abolition of the state, and they do agree with, and all social hierarchies, but they do agree with communists in the abolition of capitalism, private property, wage slavery, and those sort of things. Main difference between anarcho-communism and regular communism is the common ownership of the means of production. The common ownership of the means of production is that everyone will have ownership of the means of production, rather than the state, as in communism, or the free market, as in most extreme versions of capitalism. This common ownership is directly tied to the socialist adage of from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, which holds that anyone can, which anarcho-communists take to mean anyone who needs to, in a society where everything is able to be provided for them, individuals can dip in and take resources that they need in order to be able to survive and function. The anarcho-communist society that they imagine or want to create would be a direct democracy where everyone has a say in voting for various. It's kind of like referendums for everything. Instead of voting in Parliament, you would be able to vote on those laws directly in kind of like primaries or caucuses. Also included within this would be workers' councils. These workers' councils would run and manage the companies and businesses, factories, industries that would where work would take place. These would be made up of workers. They would be democratically elected, and in some cases would even comprise with the direct democratic ideas of all the workers at a factory or a farm or any sort of industry being able to have a say over what goes on and what the wages, policies of the company are. The main person who influenced anarcho-communism is the Russian anarchist Peter Kropotkin. Also influenced anarcho-communism was the American Emma Goldman. The ideology of anarcho-communism is one of the very few anarchist ideologies that has been directly put into practice. For instance, it was the ideology of the Free Territory of Makenovia in the Ukraine, which ran parts of southeastern Ukraine during the Russian Revolution, 1917 to 1920, and the Russian Civil War from 1917 to 1921. It also influenced the running of the Korean People's Association in Manchuria, in northeast China, during the Sino-Japanese War and the occupation of Korea. It was, of course, destroyed by the Empire of Japan and nationalist China in 1931. It was also the ideology of Aragon and the Aragon and Catalonian regions of Spain during the Spanish Civil War and Spanish Revolution, before they were crushed by the nationalists led by Franco, without the support of the Spanish Communist Party. The second ideology is anarcho-syndicalism. Anarcho-syndicalism, unlike anarcho-communism, anarcho-syndicalism focuses more on the workers and how to achieve the abolition of the state, greater workers' rights, and more power to the workers through the use of strikes, and in particular, revolutionary industrial unionism. Revolutionary industrial unionism differs from regular trade unionism in that instead of associating in a union for a particular work, so for instance, all people who work in a cotton factory or a cotton factory would be in one union. Everyone who worked in a textile mill would be in one factory. Everyone who worked in a a place that manufactures like computers and things would be in a different union. Instead, all classes, from people who worked in the farms, people who worked in factories and industries, all of them would just be in one trade union, and they would work together to achieve better working conditions for all of the working class, rather than just one factory or one particular industry. Also important to anarcho-syndicalism is direct democracy, also direct action, which is the use of trade unionism as strikes within the workforce itself, rather than having a top-down union. You'd have the union within the union organized within that factory and them striking, rather than it's set up as a organization comprising a bunch of different factories. And also would be workers' self-management, similar to workers' councils, very similar to workers' councils, in that, but instead of having elected representatives on said council, all workers would be part of managing the direction of the company and would have a say, in the vein of direct democracy. So you can see that anarcho-syndicalism has more of a direct democracy reaching for the workers rather than just revolutionary overthrowing the state. They would use strikes to reform the state. There would also be the creation of a cooperative economic system, which is very similar to the anarcho communist views on the economy, but instead it would be everyone would have a say of the various things that would happen in society, and they would be able to dip in and out within if they need to. And you would also have a say. It goes more into it basically goes more into play of that workers' self-management model of factories. We will now move on to looking at individualist anarchism. Individualist anarchism, as I said before, is where the individual has paramount over the group, and the individual should never be subordinate to the group. Individualist anarchism, although a lot of it does disagree with capitalism and calls for the overthrow of the state and the abolition of private property, but not personal property, some of it has been taken up by more right-leaning libertarians in America to create what we will look at in a moment, the ideology of anarcho-capitalism. But the first ideology we're going to look at for individualist anarchism is egoism. Egoism was created by the philosopher Max Stirner, who, again, as I said at the beginning of this video, we will look at next week. He argued that the state, property rights, natural rights, and the notion of a society itself should all be abolished, and that they are in fact spooks, that they are figments of people's imagination, that they're not actually real and concrete things. And although that is true, they are not real, that they are not real things, they are things that we do in the social world that we do interact with. Instead of a state, Stirner and various other egoists argue that what instead should be created is what's called a union of egoists. A union of egoists would be a voluntary group organization whereby, say you wanted to campaign on making all ice cream chocolate. You get a group of people together who all have similar views on that, and you'd start campaigning for it. And then you'd move on to something else, like, say, all sprinkles need to be pink, and some people would leave that group and other people would join. It's all about cooperation for selfish reasons. Max Stirner was very much of the view that humans are inherently selfish, that we need to be selfish, but that working together we can achieve more than we would alone, and we do that selfishly. Also very important to egoism is the idea that the only true limitation on an individual is their power to achieve what they want, and he viewed this in the vein of private property. He saw private property as a tyranny and as a concrete example of people's using their power to oppress and rule over others. And instead he argued that everyone should be able to be given the chance to do that, and by doing that everyone would be on the same level. So it's very much that kind of equality of selfishness, you know. The final ideology we will look at for this session is anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism is often viewed by other anarchists as a contradiction, because you cannot be an anarchist and support capitalism and private property. Anarcho-capitalists, however, argue that they are anarchists. They are anarchists because they want to abolish the state. And in particular, they want to abolish the state and replace it with a system of private agencies in the free market who will oversee various aspects of society, including, as I said, regulations regarding healthcare, and there would be private companies that would be set up and run these things. So it would be a society that would be run by companies and individuals instead of regulatory states. Anarcho-capitalists argue this because they view that the free market is the ultimate voluntary society, and that we already have it. We just need to abolish the state and let the free market run everything. Because people can choose to invest or not invest in the free market, to make money or not make money, to partake in this society or not partake, they view it as I said, the ultimate voluntary society, and that it's already set up, so just abolish the state and we're fine. They also argue for a legal code based on self-ownership, so everything you own and create is yours by right. And they also argue that this legal code also needs to be based on the non-aggression principle, which is that anyone who is forced to sell their property, anyone who is forced to do certain things against their will is ultimately against the law. And that ultimately is the one regulation that they would keep in place.